Today I get to have a conversation with Justin Herman, creator of the Controlled Chaos podcast and the new executive director for R12. This is the Youth Worker Daily. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Youth Worker Daily, where we hope to encourage youth workers just like you with tools, tips, resources, and helps so that you thrive in your ministry. My name is Jay Hyam, and like we said in the teaser here, today I get to sit down and talk with a friend of mine, Justin Herman, creator of the Controlled Chaos podcast, middle school ministry pastor extraordinaire, and hear some of his story and some of the things that God has been doing in and through his life, even to the point of bringing him now to a new exciting position as the executive director of R12 Ministries. We talk a little bit today about some of Justin's story of how he got into youth ministry, some of the things that he's done in youth ministry. But then we spend some time actually talking about this new role that he has with an organization called R12. What is R12? Well, R12 is a ministry that looks to connect moms and daughters, dads and sons, with opportunities for them to serve and learn leadership qualities and abilities together. Something that I think you're going to find super interesting today. So let's not waste too much more time here. Let's jump into the podcast. But let me just say here real quick, there was a couple connection snafus. So you're going to hear a little bit of the audio and the video getting a little tweaked. Zoom is a great tool and a resource, but every once in a while it does its internet thing. So bear with me through those little glitches there. I think you're going to find today's conversation to be super helpful. So let me get into this. Here's my conversation with Justin Herman.
Hey everybody, so I am here with a friend of mine from the other side of the country. This is Justin Herman. You may know him from the Controlled Chaos podcast. That's actually kind of how we met through that, and reached out to Justin because Justin's got a lot of things going on in life and in ministry, but more so because Justin is, in my mind, a pro at middle school ministry. And being in middle school ministry, he has a great story that has led him to a new job. But what we're going to do first off, Justin, is just in case anybody does not know who you are, tell us about you. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What got you into youth ministry? What keeps you in youth ministry? Maybe a little bit about your family. As much as you want to let us know. Tell us about Justin.
Gosh, where do I begin? Thanks for having me on, first of all. Okay, I love everything you do. I love the personality you are at National Youth Workers. I was good to see you last year. You're wonderful. Everything you're doing is great. So thank you for having me on. So I grew up in New York, Buffalo, New York specifically. I was born in Manhattan, New York, and then raised in Buffalo. And single mom. Dad left when I was very young. And studied, business, and studied hockey, and studied girls, and just studied all the normal Buffalo, chicken wings, all the normal Buffalo stuff. Eventually, really felt the call into ministry. Got really connected to church in college. Even though I was going to church younger, it was different than when you're 19 and you kind of decide on your own, like, man, I really need something different than what I'm doing. Started going to church, really got connected, started serving, really felt the call to ministry, left to go to a school in Missouri, which I've never been to Missouri before. I had to look it up on a map, didn't know where it was, which tells everything you need to know about public school in Buffalo. And then got accepted and loaded up 3 duffel bags, 50 pounds each, because I had to weigh them, and hopped on a plane. And I landed, and I was like, holy crap, I'm in friggin' Kansas City, Missouri, and had someone drive me to the school, and I roll up on the school, and I thought to myself, holy crap, what did I get myself into? A very small school. And I'm from New York. I'm just used to different. But I spent 4 years there. Had some really epic screw-ups along the way, but nothing I couldn't, by the grace of others, make my way out of. Graduated. Had a job waiting for me in California. I did a lot of applying before I graduated, and got a job, which was awesome. Moved to Huntington Beach, California, started working there, and then moved out to Mariners Church in Irvine, California from there, and then left there after I was there for a number of years. Then my mom passed away, and it shook everything up for me and my wife, and we just made some big life changes, moved our family closer to her parents in Riverside, California, took a job there in Riverside. We worked there for about 9 months, didn't work out, and they asked me to leave, and I had no problem leaving. And then I got a job doing construction sales, which was, a very odd direction to go. But the owner of the company, the CEO of the company, it was a good friend of mine from Mariners, basically helped me get this job. I had no experience in construction, but I experienced in sales and talking to people and whatever. So I ended up actually doing pretty good. And then, just was enjoying that. I did a lot of side stuff, consulting, speaking, youth stuff, church, whatever stuff, especially during the whole COVID thing, did a lot of podcast stuff, helping people get some of the digital things figured out. But then I had the opportunity to interview for a job for a nonprofit, which I know nothing about nonprofits, by the way. Everything I know about nonprofits, honestly, I've probably learned in the last 4 weeks. And I thought there was no way they were going to hire me. Really talented people were interviewing, but they did. And I was just myself. I was honest. I didn't try and act like I knew anything about nonprofits because, they would have seen through that immediately because I didn't. And so at every phase, I was like, oh yeah, there's no way. But, God was in it. And I said, and I had a really cush deal going, by the way, at this other place. It was sales, but it was on call. So I only worked when I had to. The rest of the time I got to do whatever I wanted. And some people who had the job like mine would spend their time playing video games or working on their motorcycle or just doing whatever. And then when you have to go, you have to go. But I spent my time working with churches and, really doing, probably 3-4 other things that were entrepreneurial in nature, and I made a ton of money, which my wife had no problem with. And so it was a pretty good deal, but I was like, man, if God's in this, then I'm going to go for it. And, because only if he's in it is this going to happen, because there's just no way, right? But it worked out, and they wanted me, and which was really humbling and exciting. And they knew all about the sandals stuff. And they knew the kind of person like me, the personality type like me, is one of the board members. Just really great guy, great leader. And he's just intuitive. He just knows that, 8 personality who, will kind of buck the system a little bit. They'll go big. It's always a risk on that person because they're either going to blow up, results and culture in really good ways, or they're going to, blow up in really poor ways, and it's not going to work out, which was the case at Sandals. But so they offered me the job. I accepted it. Now I'm a month in. The whole thing's wild. I love it. Working from home. The people are cool. Been hanging out and talking with chapter presidents, and it's just the whole thing. It's just a pastor again. It absolutely is an incredible job.
Well, yeah, we're going to get into that there in a little bit. I want to learn more about R12 and what their ministry looks like, and we'll talk about that. But this is really one of the things behind this podcast vlog thing that we're experimenting with is, I've always I always love sitting down talking with youth workers and just hearing their stories, what got them into youth ministry, what God's doing in their youth ministry. And I've always dreamt of, what it would be like for just youth workers to share their story. So if we can go back a couple of years, not to try to relive the good old days, but because of your time at Mariners, Mariners, healthy, large church, probably some great ministry took place there. Tell us about the role that you had, and maybe some of just the things that you saw God do in and through you and with your students.
There's just so many things to say about Mariners. I still go to church at Mariners, by the way. Me and my wife attend there every week. We're watching online now. I lead a men's Bible study, which is super weird, but also really fun. When I first came there, I thought I had hit the lottery. I've never seen a church that big, really in person, the way I did at Mariners. I went and there was a big FCA event that was hosted at Mariners. That was the first time I've ever been on campus. First time seeing, a huge youth building like that. The whole thing was unbelievable. And when I got connected with Matt McGill, and he was like, well, hey, maybe, you want to come over here. We're looking for people. And I was just like, it was unbelievable to me. And I just thought I had made it. And, which a lot of people think when they think big churches. And the reality is that, working at a big church is it's the same as working in a small church, just more money, more problems, and more stress, and more expectation, and more eyes on you. It is, there's so many good things to say, but it's not like this fairy tale, like now you've made it walking through the door. It wasn't that. I had some major screw ups there. I remember one time I cast a vision for camp. Okay. At the time we were doing camp year after year. It was like, taking like 100 kids. This is a large church. So I was like, taking 100 kids to camp. Like, this is crazy. And I found out it's because the camp we were going to, like the max capacity was like 100 kids. It just was what it was. And so I remember the day I leaned over to my operations person. I was like, you know what? Next year, we're going to take 300 kids to camp next year. And she looked at me like, what the? And I'm like, we're going to do it. We're going to get started today. We're going to find a new camp. We're taking 300 kids next year. Yeah. And that's what I shared. I mean, everyone thought I was crazy. And we did it. Now we went 50, we ended up going to a camp, the only camp we could get at the time was one that was up in Northern California. It cost, we went over budget like $50,000 with that camp, by the way. Yeah, that's a huge number, right? And
I've got over probably 1,000.
Yeah, wow. $50,000. Probably should have lost my job, to be honest. Like, if someone goes over $50,000 and he's, I think at the time I was like 27, maybe. I'm pretty sure I was 27. They should have fired me for sure. But they didn't. And one of the big reasons they didn't is because the last 5 years we brought 100 kids to camp, or 6 years brought 100 kids, and this year we brought 300 kids to camp. And we usually bring 20 leaders. Now we brought 80 leaders. Like they were willing to look past the huge screw up and surround me with people who could really help kind of figure out that component of me and how I led, and the organizational side of things financially, because they wanted to see where I could take the ministry. So they didn't fire me. They let me keep going. And I learned more at Mariners than I learned in school. I learned more in the years at Mariners than anywhere else. In some ways, the years that I was there was really the Wild West in a lot of ways, because Kenton was looking toward retirement. Like he could see it in the front windshield, going through everything. He just knew it was coming. He could see it. And it was on the horizon. And so those last few years, like, he was mellow about certain things. He got really involved in other things. Like, it was unlike any other time, that Mariners ever had, because he was looking toward transition and he wanted to leave. He didn't want to leave anything out on the field. And so we went for it in big ways. So I was allowed to try really big things, strategy differently at Mariners. I wanted to take, I really believe in overseas global outreach, getting kids out of the context to experience the world somewhere else. That, not to have the experience of like, oh my gosh, they're so poor, and like, I'm just so thankful for my refrigerator and the house I live in, but really understanding the value of true poverty. That while we may be financially rich in Southern California, we also may be, relationally poor, where we go to Uganda and the families have every meal together and they're not distracted by cell phones every 2 seconds. Like, they're relationally wealthy. While they might be economically poor, that's what true poverty is. Like, it's not just money. So I really want to take students to Uganda, or to Africa in general. Didn't know exactly where. My boss said no. And I started, instead of being bummed about it and, licking my wounds and kind of, just coming up with something else, we started it ended up being a 3-4 year strategy of taking students to Mexico, then taking families to Mexico, then doing overnights in Mexico with families, and then Uganda. And we built up so much credibility with our outreach department. They are the ones who sold it for us. They're like, we have to do this with junior high. And we did it. It was an incredible trip. They did one other one the next year, and then because of COVID, they canceled this year, and I don't think they're going to be doing it anymore. But the learning strategy and how it isn't just going for the win. Sometimes it means going a roundabout journey, that, you weren't planning to get to that destination. And the work that goes into that, and the time that goes into that, and the consideration that goes into it. It keeps paying off, I think, in different areas of what I do and how I do it. And, all those things I learned at Mariners. So, those are probably some things I'd say. I just love youth ministry because, you're able to experience life, new every year through the eyes of students who are experiencing it for the first time. Kind of remind you of how important this stuff is. Like when a kid, the things that we take for granted that we kind of understand, when a kid gets it for the first time.
Absolutely.
And you see them understanding, you're like, oh yeah, like, oh, this is really a big deal. Like I remember when I got that when I was your age or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you stay in youth ministry because it just, emphasizes yourself. It's not why, but you stay in youth ministry because every year there's going to be new kids that are going to get it for the first time. And you can, because that journey so well, you can really help students kind of move along, the path of that journey, which is a really big deal to me, which I love. So those are a couple of things that I'd say that, really connect with me and some of the reasons why I've stuck around and continue to stick around.
Yeah. Those aha moments is what I call them. When you can kind of open a student's eye, or the student's eyes are open to great truth in Scripture, or even some of those crazy, funny stories that we see with donkeys that talk and those type of things, or to take those Sunday school lessons and turn them into, wait a minute, that's what happened, and that's why that. Those aha moments are sweet, and it is fun to see that happen every couple of years for sure. Hey, while you were at Mariners, though, you launched into Controlled Chaos, the podcast. Tell me, how did that get started? What kind of happened in your ministry, or what was the major influence, aside from Kirk in the book, that really put you in a place where you felt compelled to start the podcast, and some of the success that you've had? Because I know I've listened since day one, and the conversations you've had have been incredible. So talk about the podcast a little bit.
Well, that's one of my favorite stories to tell, actually. So when I first started Mariners, so we actually circled back to Mariners, this is like 2012 maybe. Started Mariners, and probably like 3 months into being at Mariners, I got hooked in with a couple dudes, won't say who, doesn't matter who, and they were doing some coaching sessions over the phone, coaching stuff, whatever. And so they were like, hey, you work at Mariners Church, like, do you want to, Matt McGill is your boss, like, these are people who are well known, do you want to do one? And I was like, yeah, sure. They're like, well, it'll be like $100 a person, and they'll get like an hour of time with you, or whatever it is. And I can't remember the details of it, but whatever it was, I was like, yeah, let's do it. So it was out there, and there's the very beginning of like Instagram and whatnot. I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to the beginning. And so I put it out there that I was doing this and that people should buy it. He called me into his office. I'll never forget this as long as I live. Called me into his office, and he said, hey, I saw you doing this coaching thing. And I was like, oh yeah. And I thought he was going to say like, hey, good job, like, way to be awesome. That's not how it went. And he said, I saw you do this coaching thing. I was like, yeah, it'll be great. I'm pumped for it, or whatever I said. And he said, and then this is what I remember like it was yesterday. He's like, let me ask you a question. Let's say I was a youth pastor. I've been in it 15 years, and I live in Iowa, and I'm the only breadwinner in the family, and I have 3 kids, and there's an elder problem at my church, and I think they're going to fire me. What kind of advice would you give me? And I was like, and at that moment, I knew the point he was making, which was I don't need to be coaching. I don't really have anything to coach on, and because I don't know how to deal with some of these situations. I was still very young at the time. I think I was 26, almost 27 at the time. And he said, why don't you focus on being a really great youth worker for a while, and then get to some of the other stuff. And so for probably 3 or 4 years, I don't think I wrote a blog. I didn't speak it. I didn't do anything for a couple of years. Then up until this podcast thing. So the way the podcast came about, they were talking about launching one at Mariners. We did a daily read recap video once a week, and to go through the Bible reading plan that we had as a church. And so every week we'd have a different person on video kind of recapping that week, whatever. And I did a number of them, so did some of my staff. And they were talking about what we want to do next year. It took a lot out of us to do this, the videos and everything. And I said, well, why don't we do a podcast? What if we did like a daily read like podcast? Now, the funny piece about that is the idea itself was modeled after a church in Riverside. They do a podcast called The Debrief. The name of the church is Sandals Church, oddly enough. My wife grew up there. So at the time, I just knew of Sandals Church as the church my wife, went to during her college years. And I listened to this thing called The Debrief. I was like, man, this is really great. Like, Mariners should have one of these. And so I suggested kind of a format like that, Q&A, whatever, going over the daily read. And it got a lot of green lights, like as we were kind of going up the chain. So I was working on it, putting thought. I had co-hosts, like I had a bunch of stuff figured out. We had stuff paid for, like we were going to do this thing. And then in the 11th hour, it got the nix because of, whatever. It turned out the reason it ended up really getting the nix is because they knew in that year it was going to be announced that Kenton was leaving and we're going to be doing the senior pastor search. And they just didn't want to have, a bunch of stuff going. They wanted to really kind of trim stuff down because they knew that big announcement was coming. So I was like, oh, whatever. I didn't know that at the time. So I was just bummed. And my wife was like, well, why don't you start a podcast? Do like one in junior high. And I said, oh, like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. She's like, no, you should do it. Like, you should totally do it. So I called McGill and I called a couple other people, Kurt being one of them as well. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about starting this podcast about junior high. What do you think? And this is before the DYM network, I think. It was somewhere around there. And it actually was the very beginning of the DYM network. So I remember I called Griff and they talked about the DYM network. And I was like, oh man, I'd love to be in that. And he's like, well, why don't you do like 5 episodes and like, we'll, see how it goes and whatever. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. So I decided, I was thinking of a name. Josh Griffin is actually the one that suggested Controlled Chaos. And I went to Kurt to ask his permission, which he gave very quickly, obviously. And so I got started. I borrowed some microphones and I got started on my kitchen table and I just started doing the whole thing. And then I started interviewing people. And by episode 5, the downloads were larger than I thought they were going to be. That's because there was only one junior high ministry podcast in the country, and it was mine. So anyone who was interested in junior high, like they were getting this, and Marco was sharing it, and Ashley, whatever her name was, from Orange, she was on one of those first episodes, and she shared it out there. So like it was catching on like way more than I thought it was going to, and it just kept going. And then eventually Kurt, he was on an episode now and then, and then he, became the guy who was on the episode every week with me. And somewhere in there, we did a rewrite of his book, Controlled Chaos, and re-released it with the Youth Cartel. And then, things got crazy for Kurt. So he kind of stepped back to focus on other stuff. And, things were wild for me for a while. So I took some time off. And I was under contract for 2019, right? 2019, I was under contract. So even after I got let I had to keep going with I kept going with the podcast partly because I was obligated to financially. And, and just kind of gone from there. And now we're in 2020 and, I still love it. I still enjoy doing it a ton. And I don't see any end in sight. And Controlled Chaos, Chaos Nation. I love it. So it's been a blast.
Yeah, like I said, I started listening to you. I probably didn't start the very first episode that it aired, but I know I heard the first couple episodes weeks after that. They aired. In fact, I remember that's how I cut my grass. I lived on 2 acres, and I was cutting grass to Controlled Chaos every Wednesday or Thursday when it aired. And then we actually hooked up.
You want to hear a really funny story?
Yeah.
So I obviously love hearing that from people like, oh, I listen to your podcast, whatever. There's a dude in Israel who is a Christian. He's in the Israeli army. He told me via email that he listens to Control Chaos while he's like on the freaking border with a machine gun, like getting ready to take it. And I was like, holy guacamole, like that is the coolest location on earth to be listening to the podcast. It made me giggle inside. I loved it. Yeah, all right, so that's neither here. That
way beats my cutting grass.
Honestly, it beats that beats everybody's story ever. Like it was like I don't have a story that'll ever compete with that. It's like, oh yeah, as I was guarding Israel, the land of the people, I was listening to your podcast, and I'm like, that's awesome. So made me really happy.
And I think that's the cool thing about the podcast. I mean, it grew really quick, but what I always appreciated from the podcast was the content was great. The guy who, was in a smaller church, not able to hire out a middle school person. Controlled Chaos was partly what kind of got me excited for middle school ministry. I always kind of leaned towards high schoolers, and did the middle school thing because we had to. But after, the podcast hit and I reread the book after you guys rewrote it, kind of got a new passion for middle school students. And so I think that podcast just came at a great time because, even though Marco's book, youth ministry came out, or junior high ministry came out years before that, that podcast kind of re-sparked a whole kind of, hey, let's rethink middle school ministry and what that looks like for us as a church and as youth workers. And so, you've been part of a renaissance here in what middle school ministry is. Now there are multiple podcasts out there, not just Controlled Chaos, but it is.
We're in the process of buying those and just shutting them down as we speak. My lawyers are working. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, there's probably more junior high focused content out there in the last year and a half than ever before. I mean, I remember when Kurt and I were talking with Doug and Josh about launching DYM Junior High, and it just didn't work out for a number of reasons. But I remember it was like it was a time when everyone was realizing that there is no specific content for junior high. There should be. And, things that were out there, were just kind of scattered. But, over the last year, or, maybe really 2 years, I mean, the stuff that's been out there has been incredible. Really great specific content, great specific curriculum, great specific blogs and resources and more podcasts. Like I said, and I listen to a bunch of those. There's a dude named Tucker. I forget where he is. I think it's like Alabama or just some other state, Georgia maybe. And he has a middle school podcast that rocks. Like and he's a young guy just doing great stuff, hustling, working. I love it. I feel following him on Instagram. He's hilarious. The stuff he's doing with his junior high ministry is innovative and creative. And it's guys like Tucker that it's like, okay, maybe they're not going to be in junior high ministry the rest of their lives. And I think my thinking on that has evolved over time, obviously. Maybe they're not going to be in junior high ministry the rest of their life. But what they're giving right now, they're not phoning it in. And I think that's the thing, because there was such a lack of clarity around junior high in some ways, not in all ways, because I know there's still books like Marco's book and Scott Rubin's and obviously the original Controlled Chaos. But it was always easy to let junior high kind of be like the +1 kind of deal. And when it really became central to the conversation of how different they are, and Orange and Their Phases books, I think some ways helped with that, or really solidified or made it more concrete for people. When you couldn't phone it in anymore, like you'd be found out really, really fast. And the people who are doing it, they're killing it. Like even if they don't do it the rest of their lives, which is fine, they're bringing their A game right now. And I love that. And I get to hear a lot of those stories. I get to see a lot of that. Instagram makes it easy not to compare, but to just get a window in to people's highlight reels of what they're doing. And so you can be excited for them, not jealous of them, which I think we screw up all the time because, because we're idiots and we're selfish people. And, Romans 12 verse 10, I just put out a thing on Instagram for R12, just talking about what it means to be supportive of your brother in brotherly love. Paul used the word phileo, brotherly love, like where we get Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the city of brotherly love, like it's from the same
my
thing,
hometown.
Right? Exactly. So that's one of the reasons I brought it up, because I knew that. But what does it mean to love your brother? And the kind of love that you'd get out of bed at 3 a.m. to help them change their flat tire on the other side of town. Like that's what brotherly love is. And I think Instagram is such a great tool for that. Like if you want to be able to encourage, to send a quick note to someone like, hey, I saw this thing, like, my God, you're killing it. Great work. It allows you to have a window into some of their best moments to encourage them, not to be jealous of them, but to encourage them. And I love that. And I just love what's happening in junior high ministry in general.
Yeah. Well, I think what you just said, I think that's so very true, especially for us guys who have been in it for a long time. We've kind of moved past that, I want to do what everybody else is doing. And I know for me, it's the same thing. I mean, I follow a ton of youth ministries simply to see what they're doing and learn from them, because, I'm coming up on 30 years. And, youth ministry is not the same as it was when I started, 20, 29 years ago. And so to see the innovation and see what other groups are doing. A huge place to learn about things. And that, you're right. We got to be in that place, not to compare ourselves, but to say, hey, what can I learn from this?
Well, insecurity, you will, the people around you will be able to judge how secure or insecure you are typically before you're able to realize it. And I had a master's degree in insecurity, especially when I was at Mariners. When I was at Mariners, there was a lot of great things about my leadership at Mariners. There were other things that were not great. I was great with parents. I was great with kids. I was iffy with the staff in general. I was great with my own staff. So there's some seasons that I wasn't, but overall I would say it was great. But man, I was an a-hole with some people because of my insecurity. I remember that I just felt like I had to be crowned the winner and for everyone to see it in order to be validated as this leader that deserves to be this mega church. And those insecurities would come out in what I post, the what I say in the post. I was always quick to emphasize, this is the first time, we've ever done this, or this is the most we've ever had, in the history of, and I wouldn't say it to rally excitement. I would say it so people could really understand I'm great.
Look what I did.
Everyone needs to know, you might think it's a great story, but it's only truly great through the lens of this never happened before. And I'm the guy who did it. That insecurity, people would confront me on it, those who have the guts to, but it never really cemented, honestly, probably until after I left Mariners in some ways. Things going the way they went at Sandals. Did I truly understand what the depth of my insecurity? And that, keep in mind, that whole time I'm doing controlled chaos, right? Like I'm doing it, but I deal with aspects of that through some seasons, but I was the worst person to see it in myself. Other people could see it in me as clear as day. And luckily I have really close friends that don't turn their back on me. So they help me work through all of it. And not that I'm perfect now, but I'm not the schmuck I used to be. I'll tell you that.
That's why I got you on the podcast now, because you figure all that stuff out. You can be much better now.
Oh, dude, I don't feel like writing a book anytime soon. If I did, and it would be a leadership book, and it would be about that. It would be about the epic fails, the epic confrontations, the epic just heartlessness at times, carelessness for people and their feelings and their emotions, and just how I've just learned from a lot of that and would do things very differently if I had a chance again. And I've gotten multiple chances to do things differently, and sometimes I haven't, sometimes I haven't, but I think overall I probably have.
Yeah, I think that's true. Me being involved with NYWC and meeting youth workers from across the country, I can definitely say there's a time that I was very insecure, and I compared myself to what was happening at Saddleback and some of the other larger churches on the West Coast. And I was always on the East Coast, and by the time things happen on the East Coast, it's like West Coast has been doing it for 4 years, and then we're finally doing it. But when you kind of come into that place where you start seeing your peers, your youth worker peers, as sources of help and of resourcing and of encouragement instead of people that we're competing against, it dramatically changes the way you see your role in ministry. And I can definitely look back at the 11, 12, 13, 14 years working with NYWC, where I've seen that come out. And now, it's a huge thing. So having conversations like this is exactly kind of what we're hoping for, to kind of get guys who have been around, who have learned those lessons, and then be able to kind of, hey, I wasn't a good youth worker when I started, and I've learned a lot, and I might be an okay youth worker now, but there's still that process of learning how to do ministry in the midst. And I think in some ways social media has elevated that comparison, because you do see what everyone else is doing. And, man, I'm 1 year into, actually June 1st is my anniversary for this new role that I'm in. And, it's so easy for me to look at other churches who are dealing with, 50 to 100 kids on their, student gathering. I'm a year in and we're getting 25 to 30. And I think, gosh, I can't wait till the day I'm 50 or 100. But I got to remember, no, I'm here now, and these are students that God has given me now. And the minute I let comparison jump into the mix of things, I lose focus on what God is doing here in the now with the 25 and 30 kids that I'm seeing. And so that's probably a whole nother podcast, right in there, just talking about those type of things.
Talk for hours about it.
Oh, yeah, and that's a really kind of what I've started doing with this podcast is hearing youth worker stories, and allowing the stories to encourage and to teach others. So, I want to get into R12 here, but before we do that, what's this season of the coronavirus look like for you, and how much have you been relating or dealing with students? I know you've done some interim stuff. Or have you completely pulled away because of R12? The timeline in there.
So I was doing a lot of interim stuff during that year. I just did whatever. I was working this other job, and then I was interim, youth guy at this church that just needed some leadership for a season. I was teaching a bunch. I did some trainings. Did more on the podcast, obviously. What else did I do? Was helping with a number of churches with their digital side of things and their communications. One church I was like basically their communications director. The staff reported to me. The whole thing was wild. Actually, I loved it.
Crazy.
And it made a ton of money, and I enjoyed every bit of it. I honestly could have kept doing that for a while. Like I was really enjoying it. It was pretty lax. But when this role opportunity came about, executive director, I was interested, but I was, interested in the way that's like, what, I'm gonna have no chance, and it's whatever. If God's in it, then I'll get it. But if not, whatever. I'm not going to sweat over it. But then I ended up getting it, and I made the deal with myself that if I took it, I wasn't going to just do this and do a bunch of other stuff too. If I got this, I was going to really, other than the podcast, I was going to quit everything else, hand it off to other people. And focus completely on this new ministry. The part of that was advice Kurt gave me. Part of that was I just didn't feel like trying to balance all these things. It just wasn't worth it to me. So I didn't. I stopped doing a bunch of that stuff, focusing solely on R12. I don't regret it, and I'm really happy I'm doing it. It gives me time to really just dream about, cue into what is happening with that ministry. And so, I love it. And I've been doing it for about a month now, and handed off all my stuff, wrapped all that up, handed off to people. And now I'm fully with R12.
Awesome. So let's jump into R12. First off, the first time I ever heard of it is when you posted something on social media about R12.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was the announcement from the outgoing executive director.
Kristen, she's wonderful.
That role. Yeah. So what is R12? How did it get started? And what's their mission? What's their purpose?
Yeah. So R12 started in 2010. So this is a 10-year anniversary, actually. And Kristen was one of the founders. Also, she's been the executive director the last 4 years. She's great. And it started because a lot of students do service. They join maybe a service organization in high school. They have service hours to do, partly maybe because they're required to do them for school, partly because families know that if they make that part of their college application, it helps them. And all those things are good things, right? Teaching kids to serve and the importance of it, that's good. And a lot of organizations do it a lot of different ways. These moms, there's 5 of them, were looking at the organizations that existed, and none of them were right for them. They were like, man, we don't want to send our kid off to serve and we do some other thing. Like, we want to do it together, and we want something that's like Bible-based. So they decided to start it. Instead of complaining about it, they started a nonprofit of their own. And they partnered it with World Vision initially. And that partnership ended, and they rebranded, reincorporated under R12. And now they have 10 chapters. It's based off Romans 12, which is the foundational scripture for the organization. They have 10 chapters, which we're going to grow, hopefully very soon. We'll be able to start launching new chapters all over the country, which I'm really excited for. It's one of the reasons that really attracted me to the job, to be honest. And it's about mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, serving, developing in leadership together, to become, leaders for the local and the global church, and looking ahead at the rest of their lives, just being deeper in relationship with one another. And I love that. Like, I love the whole picture of that. And it, just comes down to family, doing family differently. There's a lot of ways to do family. And I think, especially in this day and age, we have high school kids that, leaving the church. They're not interested anymore. Parents aren't going to force them to go. Kids going off to college unprepared, underprepared. And I want to see families where the kid wants to come back to the parent for advice when they're thinking about getting married, having kids, and just getting investment advice, or getting dating advice, or getting classes advice, or maybe I want to switch my major, or maybe I get into big trouble at school and I need help out, and instead of calling one of my peers, I have this deep relationship with my parents that has been born out of experience, and there's trust there, and though we were building that really intentionally in those high school years. So I am attracted to all of those things. Mm-hmm. And that's what R12 is focused on. I think that for the chapters we have, it's been incredible. I see this honestly as one of the best tools in the toolbox of youth workers. It's, again, one of the reasons that I was like, I jumped at the opportunity when they eventually did offer it to me, because I remember my very first church. I was one guy that was managing junior high. And in a lot of churches, you have one guy who's managing junior high and a high school. Maybe it's just kind of volunteer run. And if there was an organization that came to me and said, hey, we believe what you believe, and we actually think we can do family differently, I would have been interested to hear, what do you mean differently? Like, we've been doing it, I feel like we've been kind of doing it the same way for a while, and getting the same results. What's this different way? And being able to unpack to them how we could partner with them, really kind of be one of their staff members of their church, handling all the service stuff. We'll resource them with everything, help connect parents to this, because it's a parent and student driven deal. It's not just students and it's not just parents, it's them together. So, how we could do a level of great parent ministry, resourcing of parents, great student ministry, resourcing students, equipping them to do and hand off leadership so things can be planned and structured, but so that they can focus on evangelism. R12 is not an evangelistic organization. It's about taking students and parents who know Jesus, helping them serve locally, make an impact, but broadly have deeper experiences together, debrief together, pre-brief together, share these stories time, so that we're rebuilding the structure and building this greater depth to what family is. And I love every bit of that, and I think it can be wildly successful. Like I said, if I was at my very first church, I would have jumped at something like this. And I think for a lot of churches in the country, like, this is going to be a great tool in their toolbox. They have a lot of things to do, a lot of things to worry about, a lot of things to implement, and this takes that serve, the serve parent piece, and really resources it well, which I think, honestly, I really believe is going to be an incredible tool.
Yeah. Put some skin on this. You say it's a great opportunity for moms and dads, sons and daughters, to serve new leadership. Give me, as much as you can, an example. Like, what does that look like? Because you're saying it's another toolbox, another tool in the toolbox. And I can run down a number of other ministries that are tools in the toolbox. But give me a specific, what can R12 offer me and my students and their families?
That's great. So let's say you're at a church, which you are. R12 can come in. We can bring all of our resources, the years of experience, and the tools that we have to do three things really, really well. Help you figure out what things they can do to serve. How do you identify great serve opportunities in your community? Okay. And what's the structure around them? So if you maybe moved to a new town, you don't know, maybe you've been in the town for a while and you're like, you know what, there's just nothing here. No. There's always something. And we're going to help you identify what that something is. And maybe it's organizations in your town. Maybe it's just looking and unearthing opportunities that have been innovated in one of our other chapters. But we're going to be able to help you see where the serve opportunities are in your community. Number two, we're going to be able to give you all the tools that you need and structure, more importantly, to bring students and parents together and say, hey, who wants to do this? Here's what the commitment looks like. Here's the schedule. Here's the breakdown. Here's everything that it takes to pull this off. kind of packaged up for you digitally so that you can get students and their parents in the same room, talk through what it looks like, what's the commitment, so on and so forth, what's the meetings look like, and we have breakdowns for everything. This is how to run a meeting. This is what you talk about the meeting. This is how you structure your serves. This is the pre-brief stuff that it's all packaged for. It's all customizable too. So there's certain things that it's like, this is what R12 is, and there's things where you can add your own questions, add your own stuff. So we then not only identify places, all the structure to get those families together, and then get them out the door to actually start serving. And the third thing, which I think is just really, really great, regular resourcing of leadership, content, Bible content. So one of the things we do at these monthly meetings, so they do one meeting a month for 8 months. And they'll hear a speaker, and they'll talk about some leadership stuff. We have videos that we're putting together, things that you can share that's from R12, but that you can throw your own logo on to send out to your parents. Resources that'll be coming out through email that you can forward on to them. Take our name off of it, put your name on it, and so there's never going to be a lack of oh man, I got to come up with something for this. You don't need to come up with anything. We're going to give you everything you need. Now, you can use it as you want. And if you want to come up with your own video, you're a pretty tech-savvy guy, right? So you want to come up with your own leadership video, great. But if you don't want to, there's going to be a library of videos that you can take and send and embed into emails. And it's going to make it really easy to say, okay, well, what am I actually going to get out of this? Well, you're going to get a deeper knowledge of Scripture and the Bible. You're going to get a deeper understanding of what leadership is and be challenged in different ways. And, it's going to be useful for the here and now, but it's going to be setting the stage to do family differently long term. Eventually we're going to have curriculum that goes year by year, month by month for girls and boys. It's separated, girls and boys, although when we do it at churches, it might look different than that. And we're going to have curriculum going. We're going to have just more and more resources to help students and families in communities serve, grow deeper together in leadership so that they're ready to be kingdom changers for the local and the global movement of the church.
Cool. No, I love that. I think that unpacks that a lot more and makes sense of, those phrases, leadership and service. We hear those all the time. I like that you could come in and kind of look at the community. So just a little context in this from my perspective. 1 year in here to the new church, we didn't really have a summer last year, so no mission trip, no service opportunities, none of those things happened because we were in the midst of transitioning in. But we had lined up, mission trips, summer camp, all that stuff now gone. And so I'm like, okay, so what do we do for service here? And the first things that the pastor rattled off, and this is not bad, this is okay. Well, we've got the food pantry and the soup kitchen, and you can go downtown and you can serve one of those things, and they're not bad. But I learned a long time ago, service needs to come with something else in order for it to impact and leave that mark on students that wants them, that causes them to want to serve others. And I always found, I've taken students to soup kitchens and pantries, and we've unpacked boxes, and we have stocked shelves, and we have served food, and never really saw the impact from what that was. So to think about a way to create a service opportunity that actually leaves a mark on our students where they're not just serving because they need the hours, but now, because I feel deeply that service is a mark of who we are as Christians, as believers. The church is called, we're DNA'd to serve. And in many ways, we've missed that component by saying, set up tables and chairs, that's your serving, or, do this, that's your serve. And I feel like we just missed that, and students are missing that. And so to hear an organization's kind of rethought that and brought that forward and said, we can come into your community and we can help you find those unique things that are not going to allow for students to serve, but they're going to make that difference or that impact. Does that sound like what you guys are all about? And
doing it with parents. You see, that to me, that's the big key.
I like that.
We're dying to separate our kids from our parents. And I mean, again, this is coming from a guy that's been in youth ministry for years. It feels like we're just dying for opportunities to split them up. when that's not even the way the Bible talks about parenting.
Nope, I agree.
And I'm pro youth ministry. I do youth ministry. I'm pro youth ministry, but I'm also pro parents. I'm pro Deuteronomy 6 of parents taking responsibility. Now, every parent wants to be a better parent. There's a lot of them don't know how. They don't know where to start, and especially when it comes to spiritual things. One of the reasons I'm so excited about R12 in this season is we're coming off of a time where every church in America, pretty much every church in America, 90% of churches in America, if not higher than that, they've been closed in the very real fact of the doors have been locked and they can't drop their kid off to youth group. And one of two things happened. Well, maybe one of three things. Either one, parents have done nothing, and youth pastor does a Zoom call or they do whatever they do, and it's the parents who's like, yeah, do that, whatever. Right. Option two, they have made it worse. They've made it worse because they have had a completely different view of what it means to follow Jesus or what it means to disciple their kid, and they've made the whole thing weird and uncomfortable, and it actually has gone the wrong direction. Or they've looked at it and said, okay, how do I do this now? I'm now the spiritual leader. It's the responsibility's on me. How do I do it? And parents have done it, and they've enjoyed it. Like, they've enjoyed actually doing Bible study with their kid. They've enjoyed talking about spiritual things. Like, the youth pastor of the church is great, but parents have enjoyed parenting. And what a novel idea, right? Crazy. So the thing I love about R12 is that it builds upon that idea that 90% of churches in America have been doing this. Parents have been the disciplers of their kids for the last couple months. They've been the ones having the spiritual conversations. And for a lot of those parents, they're not going to want to stop. Like, they're not going to want to just go back to church and be like, okay, well, see you later. The last 2 months have been great, but now get up, get the hell out of here. Some parents are going to want to still be involved. But how? Well, the youth pastor could get in a whiteboard and kind of figure out some new ideas of how to bring parents in, or you can give R12 a call and we can bring a solution that still, you're still going to do youth group, bring your friends, let's do a big all-nighter, let's do summer camp. Parents, you know what? Parents, for some of you, you've loved the last couple months. So let's keep going with that. Hey, we're partnering with this organization. We're going to do, you come, you're going to serve together. We're going to resource you with everything. Keep building upon what you've been doing. That's one of the reasons, especially now, R12, it's just, to me, it's the perfect nonprofit ministry for right now, because it's not all about the money. So we're going to be able to do these things super cheap, cheaper than anyone else is going to do them. There's no one in America that's going to be able to beat the financial side for a church that, they have a really small budget. They're figuring out how nobody will be able to beat the cost, because we're going to make it insanely cheap, and we're going to get donors to help make sure the churches who have the least amount of money don't have the least amount of ministry. They're going to be able to take advantage of everything. And for those families who've been enjoying it, they're going to be able to stay on the train they've been on inside their own community. It's going to be life-changing. I really do believe in it. And I'm excited to get it started. I've only been there 4 weeks now. So, there's a lot more to learn. There's a lot more to do. Some of the things I'm talking about don't completely exist yet. So if a church called me tomorrow, I don't have every bit of it to roll out. But this is the vision of where we're going. The board feels the same way. Obviously, I do. I'm excited about it, and we're going to be ready to roll very, very soon, and hopefully roll this out in churches all around the country, and then maybe all around the world. I think there's Controlled Chaos gave me great opportunity to meet really great youth workers in other places. Yeah. Every single community has an area where you can serve. Every single community has parents that don't want to lose touch of their kids as they're getting older. Every single community has a church that has a lot of things on their plate, and they'd love to have that extra staff member / organization that's handling this stuff for them and with them, and in collaboration with what their vision is. I'm really excited about it. I think R12 is going to be hopefully a great tool for a lot of churches, a lot of pastors out there. And then we'll see how it goes. We'll see how, things, it could totally flop. Like all things, you never know. You never know until you know. But I'm excited about it, and a lot of anticipation.
Yeah, you've almost got me sold on it. I'll definitely be looking a little deeper. I looked at the website to research for our conversation. I need to go back now and research it for ministry. Well,
don't stress over the current website. I think the new website that I'll be putting my impression on. I think it will look a lot different and answer a lot of those things a little more clearly. Because right now it's been 10 chapters, all in Southern California. That's been kind of the vision, the scope of it. Kristen was great. She was ready to take a break to be with her family, and the board wanted to bring someone in. And there was a lot of really great people that applied, like I said, and we're interviewing. And they wanted, like all of them, they just wanted to bring someone in who was able to see past just being in Southern California and how we're going to branch this out. And, partly it's people who are financially secure, who just believe that high school kids and parents should get closer during those years, not further apart. And, they're helping fund it so that we can put it hopefully in front of a lot of churches, a lot of youth workers, and change a lot of family. Again, I think we can do family differently. I think we've been doing it one way for a while. I think there's some really expensive options of how to do it differently. And then I think there's some practical, not philosophical, practical things that we can do that, are right in line with, what we're hearing Kara Powell talk about from Fuller and Sticky Faith, everything we're hearing Orange talk about, during that phase of their life. And then, okay, here's a practical thing, not just sending a paper home. Here's something that gets them in the room, that, is going to get them out there in the community. And, it just does family differently. It gives you a different view of legacy, which again, I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, well, like I said, you've almost got me here. It's actually stuff that we have talked about as a staff. We've had the conversation more than one time of what does it look like for us to kind of deep six the old youth group model of, here's your students, everything, and then the rest of the church, and kind of come up with a way that we can reunite and reignite the family. So that they can serve well together. Our church does a community garden, and just this weekend, like my family, my kids and I, my wife, we were out there digging in the garden. A couple other families with their kids were in the garden, and you kind of get that little snapshot picture of, hey, it is possible for parents and students to do something together and grow and learn from that. And so, liking what I'm hearing. Hey, I might want to chat back with you maybe 6 months in, see where you are, and
please do.
Hopefully you have your new website with your fingerprints all over it. We can
all over it.
R12. Justin, as we wrap up here, how can youth workers best connect with you, especially now with R12? Controlled Chaos. What's your
the easiest way, cell phone, right? Use my cell phone number, 714-600-0354. Text me.
Man, you're brave.
No, dude, I love talking to youth workers. I mean, that's the thing. It lights me up to just talk to, and I like getting prank calls, and I like getting disgusting memes and photos. Thanks, Doug Fields. Like I love all that stuff. Okay? So I have no problem putting my phone number out there. Instagram is easy. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's all Hey Justin Herman, HeyJustinHerman. Put links in the show notes. But man, I think that this is a season where I want to connect with more youth workers, not less. And there's probably someone listening to this who's like, man, we've done something like that in our community, or I know something like that where I live. I'd love to learn. Again, I might not be new to youth ministry, although I feel new every day. In some ways, I'm learning from these young leaders who are just killing it. I'm new to a service organization. I'm new to how to implement it in a community in the scale that we're looking at. So I'm sure someone out there has experience. Reach out to me. I'd love to talk. But yeah, the Controlled Cast podcast on Apple and everywhere else you listen to podcasts, and at Controlled Chaos on Instagram, and check it out and give me a call or shoot me a text and say hello. I'd love to talk anytime.
Awesome. And what we'll do is we will add all of Justin's contact, both for where he is with R12 and with Controlled Chaos, in the companion blog that will go with this. Just look down in our description below and click on the link for the companion blog, and you'll have all the information there. Justin, I want to say thanks to giving up an hour today to talk. It was good to connect with you.
Totally worth it.
Hear what God has been doing in your story. This podcast is all about stories. To hear how He's moved you and continues to move you, and now here R12. I know I'm excited to learn more about it, and hopefully through the podcast today, others will have a chance to meet R12 and learn more about how R12 might be able to partner with them in their ministry.
Absolutely.
To students and parents. Justin, I'd like to pray for you in R12, if that's okay, and we'll wrap it up on the other side. All right, let me pray for you, my friend. God, we give thanks for awesome opportunities to talk with youth workers, to hear their stories, to see what you are doing in their lives, the lives of their ministry and students, and their own families. Thank you for Justin, God, and the incredible ministry that he's already been a part of, coming through Mariners and Sandals, doing some interim, and now being part of R12. And we pray, God, for this new role that you have called him to, and the incredible vision that he has for this exciting ministry. We do pray that you would allow these next couple of weeks and months as he continues to settle in and cast vision and meet with folks, Lord, that you would find this to be a good fit for him, a way for him to exercise the gifts and the talents that you've given to him. And Lord, that you will use him in an incredible way to grow this ministry. Thank you for R12 and the moms who started it, just the courage they had to want to see families become integral in service and leadership. And we pray, Lord, you would continue to grow R12, bless the efforts that they have as they produce resources and tools that help families grow together. And God, bless the partnership between R12 and churches, and just continue to use the ministry to reconnect moms with daughters, fathers with sons, and family units all together. We get a better picture of what the church is supposed to look like and how it is called to function according to your word. God, we praise you for who you are, and give thanks for a great opportunity to talk with Justin today. We pray all of this in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. Justin, it sure was a pleasure, my friend. It's been a long time since we've talked. So
always, dude.
Connect with you. All right, that's going to do it for us today on this episode. Hang on tight as we do some quick wrap up, and we'll be right back.
Okay, guys, that's going to about do it today. Hopefully you enjoyed today's conversation with Justin, hearing his story and how God has just done amazing things with him and through him. It was great to touch base with him and just kind of see where he's been since leaving Sandals, doing a couple different things there, but now having this incredible opportunity to be the executive director at R12 Ministries. It's going to be an exciting thing. I am totally intrigued, and definitely will be following up with Justin to talk more about R12 and how they might be able to partner with what we're thinking and doing here in my ministry. And he and I said we're going to talk again in a couple months here, just to see where things are and how it's progressing, and those resources that he talked about, and seeing if we can't get those out to you. So make sure you're following along as we get further down the road here. We'll have some of that information for you. As always, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day to either watch or listen. We want to encourage you to make sure that you are following us on the website at theyouthworkerdaily.com. If you go there and you read the companion blog that goes with this podcast, you will have all of Justin's contact information there, both for the Controlled Chaos podcast and for R12. And like he said, reach out to him. He would love to talk with you and share some of the things that they're doing out there with R12. So take advantage of that. Reach out to him and have a conversation. And also, guys, be following us on social media. Social media is a great opportunity for us to not only just share what we're doing, but to also look at what you're doing and sharing some of those great things that you guys are posting. Many of you have been killing it over these recent weeks as we've moved to ministry online. I know I've gotten some great ideas with some of what you guys have shared, but we're always looking to share some of your ideas. So keep posting, and we'll keep sharing those things so that other youth workers can learn and grow from what you're doing. Guys, that's going to do it for us today. Before I get out of here, let me just say, if you want to be a guest on Conversations with Everyday Youth Workers, just reach out to me. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to have a blog. You don't have to, have 20 years of ministry. We're interested in the stories that God is writing with you, the youth workers in the trenches. That's why we call it Conversations with Everyday Youth Workers. So reach out. Love to schedule you for a Zoom call and get you on the podcast here so you have an opportunity to share the stories that God is giving you. All right, guys, as always, we'll see you here online. And until next time, thanks for watching the Youth Worker Daily.